This is Bloomberg Crypto, a daily Bloomberg iHeart podcast.
And I'm Philip Lager-Cranster, Senior Editor for Crypto at Bloomberg News, in today for Stacey Marie Ishmael. It is Wednesday, March the 1st. The Bank of England and the UK Treasury are moving forward with a plan to launch a digital currency. It's being called a CBDC, which is short for Central Bank Digital Currency, and aptly nicknamed Britcoin. But some critics are calling it a solution in search of a problem, particularly given the strength of the UK's fintech industry. Here today to join me to talk about this is Bloomberg reporter Emily Nicole. Emily, it's nice to finally be here with you in the studio today. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you? Are you enjoying London?
I am enjoying London very much.
It's nice and rainy for your first day.
It's very nice and rainy. I'm told that the weather was beautiful yesterday. Today, with my arrival, it's clearly changed.
Perfect for our little conversation we're about to have.
Absolutely. And we're going to be talking about Britcoin today. So let's just delve straight into it, shall we? Can you briefly explain to us what a CBDC is?
So a central bank digital currency is a form of government-issued money that instead of being on a ledger in the Bank of England and on commercial banks' own ledgers, it's also backed on blockchain. So it's verifiable. There is a token that transfers between this and that. At the minute, it's all a little bit more up in the air than that. Like, you know, if you get money sent to you in your bank account as a retail user, it looks like you had some numbers in one bank that went to some numbers in other banks. That's actually not quite how it works under the hood. But with CBDCs, there's a bit more of a blockchain transfer involved.
And at the very basic level, what would be, how would we compare it to something like a debit card?
For everyday use, probably is no different. I mean, most of us, at least in the UK anyway, it's very like digital payments forward. And so spending on your debit card or spending a CBDC is supposed to look and feel pretty much identical. The way that it's different and the reason why it's being developed is because at the minute, there are obviously people in crypto that are thinking of ways that they can use currency more fluidly. And so a CBDC, it is hoped, is a way that they can almost compete with the likes of Tether or Circle or these other private stablecoins while having it still be government-overseen bank money.
So basically, we've established it lives on a blockchain, but it's not really crypto. I mean, it's very distinct from what we would consider a crypto token.
Yeah, it's not decentralized really in any way. It's still very much overseen by government. It's not anonymous either, so everybody knows who you are and where you're sending and how much you're sending it to. The only difference is that it'll be, I guess, a little bit faster, potentially. It may be more flexible in terms of where you can send it and who you can send it to, because if wallets are compatible once they're developed, then that'll be a little bit easier than at the minute where, for example, you have to get someone's bank account details and have it all verified and all that kind of stuff. So it may be a solution to some of those issues, but as I said before, we're in a digital economy in the UK already, so a CBDC is something that is probably a little bit more helpful for those in less developed economies where the banking system is a little bit less advanced.
This is the main objection here. You look at the former Bank of England governor, Mervyn King, calling it a solution in search of a problem.
But simply creating a central bank digital currency, on the face of it, it's not obvious that it brings about the sort of transformation people often assume it must lead to.
What do they mean when they say that? Like, and this is not just, we should be clear that this is not just in Britain that this debate is going on. I mean, it's happening everywhere. But what is the point of view? How do you describe the point of view that this is a solution in search of a problem?
So in the UK, we have something called real-time gross settlements, RTGS. It's a very big system that the bank has been working on for many, many years and is actually currently in the process of quite an expensive upgrade to that. And that's what enables payments to transfer pretty much immediately. Like if I were to send you money via bank transfer right now from UK bank to UK bank, it's almost instant. In other countries, even in like the US, where you'd say the economy is pretty advanced, the banking system doesn't quite match up and it can still take several days. But in the UK anyway, we pretty much have that. And that's why others think of this as a solution in search of a problem, because that issue of instant payment is already solved somewhat. The reason why a CBDC may be useful in the eyes of skeptics is because they see the bankers trying to compete with the world of crypto, not get left behind if other countries are also developing CBDCs. You know, they wonder if there's a digital yen or if there's a digital euro, perhaps a digital pound is required in order for us to be able to achieve proper conversion between those different economies.
And the other thing is, as you already said, we have the e-dollar, well, very early stages of talks about that.
It's actually much further back than ours. We're a bit more advanced on the e-dollar.
Yes, exactly. We have the e-yuan would be one that's very far ahead. The e-naira in Nigeria. And we're seeing central banks around the world starting to tinker with these kinds of experiments. What is it? Is there anything about Britcoin that stands out here? What class of CBDCs does it belong to?
So what we've been talking about over the last few weeks is mainly the proposals for a retail CBDC. So that's one to be used by you and me. There is also another conversation going on for a wholesale CBDC. That would be a digital currency that would enable banks to transfer between each other. So it would help settle larger amounts of capital between, JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs or Santander and HSBC and make that side of the system a little bit faster. There's more of an argument for a wholesale CBDC. Even the Bank of England governor, Andrew Bailey, has said, a wholesale CBDC has quite a few many uses and might actually be something that could really help improve the banking system in this country. But for a retail one, there's a little bit more of a limited use case. People could expect to be paid in a UK CBDC. They could want to pay their mortgage in it, but it really, at least in terms of what's already out there, is pretty similar to what we're used to. And in some ways, that's kind of important, right? It needs to be similar, because if the learning curve is too steep, then nobody will want to use it at all.
And we'll be right back for more with Bloomberg crypto reporter Emily Nicole. And then there's also the proposal from the Bank of England to basically have a limit of how much you can hold. I believe it was 10,000 to 20,000 pounds most.
Yes, between those two.
What is that intended to kind of solve for? Is this also, I imagine it has to do with the fear of sucking money out of the deposit system. What's the background of that?
Yeah, I think initially, while a CBDC is still in its infancy, you wouldn't want to be able to put everything into it. It still needs to be tested, it still needs to be trialed, make sure that it works out in the open. And so that initial limit is something that helps banks to kind of maintain a bit of an understanding of exactly how a CBDC works, see how people are using it for several years before they then let it run wild and loose. One of the big concerns with digital currencies is always the idea of people not being able to track what it's being used for, money laundering, illicit finance. A UK CBDC should be able to counteract all of those things, because they're not going to let anybody be private while they're using it. So ideally, it should be the same as if you put money in a bank account. You're still going to have to tell the bank who you are. But there is obviously the concern that if a CBDC becomes something that is interchangeable with other digital currencies around the world, is interchangeable perhaps even with stable coins one day, that could lead to a daisy chain of finance where then eventually you're not able to tell who somebody is.
And is there a debate in the UK about privacy when it comes to the development of CBDC and the potential launch of Britcoin?
For sure. That is actually one of the biggest roadblocks to it. So the UK is not one to ever give up their individual privacy if they can avoid it. We had a legislative attempt a few years ago to set up a national register of identity for us all to have ID cards, something that's pretty common in some other countries, but it's not a thing here. And there was a very large public outcry to that. It didn't make it through our Houses of Parliament because basically people didn't want the government having a register of who everybody is and where they live. And so with the CBDC, that was one of the biggest concerns, was that we were giving a state institution, the Bank of England, the right to a repository of information about who everybody is, where they live, how much money they have. And that's one of the reasons why the commercial banks will be involved in this process, because it keeps the Bank of England out of that. It doesn't let them see, who you are. Everything is partially anonymized in that sense. The banks will know, but the Bank of England won't.
If you look at the various levels of pushback, ranging from, looking at privacy, which to some extent, as you say, is being addressed, but also this idea that it's a solution in search of a problem, as we talked about. What's the main marketing pitch? What's the BOE's and the government's pitch behind doing this? What are they trying to sell it on right now? Is it convenience? Is it a mix of different things?
There's an element of the convenience side, right? They think that if everybody is currently finding stablecoins nice and convenient, then they should find a digital pound convenient too. There's a little bit of a chicken before the egg, though, with this, right? Stablecoins still aren't that big. They're definitely not being used for everyday payments at present. The idea is that if crypto continues to grow at the level it is, then that is a possible future, that we will use stablecoins for payments one day. And this is the Bank of England wanting to say, we're not going to get left behind with that. Even this, we started talking about UK CBDC several years ago, and we weren't expected to even see anything like a CBDC in our hands to be used for at least the second half of this decade.
And it's interesting that you mentioned stable coins, because you'd be hard pressed to find a central banker these days who loves stable coins, wouldn't you? I mean, given what's happened in the last year or so, the regulatory action that we've seen in the US, what is the regulatory view on stable coins right now? How would you describe it right now?
Negative. Right now, several big regulators, global bodies to national bodies alike, have all said that no current stablecoin meets any of the existing standards that are out there for a form of digital money. They would not be able to meet the parameters of e-money regimes in the UK, which is the thing they will have to meet in a few years' time when that becomes law. And that is a big problem for stablecoin issuers, because if the pitch is that they want to become basically a digital pound but without the Bank of England, they're going to need to meet these rules. Governments are pretty quickly trying to put regimes in place to put parameters around how stablecoins are used, how even the wallets are able to be used. Those who would store them would need to be registered with regulators too. And so a CBDC is essentially trying to compete with those in a way that will be regulated, will be safe to some extent, as safe as anything is, and would basically get ahead of stablecoins before they can get in there first.
So work is proceeding. We're moving ahead. But what does the timetable look right now like?
It's several years at least. I don't know if we have a specific date really, but it's definitely not imminent. I mean, we're still at the stages where we're having to engage with various parties to decide exactly how each thing would look. This consultation that's come out from the Bank of England in 2023 is kind of the first real framework that we've had from them in terms of what exactly this might look like. The specifics of stuff like, £20,000 limit. But there are still engagement forums happening every so often with different parties from, the banking sectors, finance sectors, technology sectors, to inform the Bank of England's work on that. We haven't yet decided, for example, if the Bank of England will be building its own blockchain to make this all happen on, if it will license that. There are banks out there that have already developed interbank settlement blockchains like JP Morgan. So those are all options. So in sum, stable coins are probably somewhere in our future. We don't quite know when, and we don't quite know yet how they will look, taste and feel. Yeah, but the governments are certainly worried, and that's why we're building a digital pound. Thank you, Emily. Thanks. That was Bloomberg reporter Emily Nicole. You can find more of her reporting on the Bloomberg terminal and on Bloomberg.com. For more, be sure to check out our twice-weekly newsletter, Bloomberg Crypto.
This is Bloomberg Crypto, a daily podcast from Bloomberg and iHeartRadio. For more shows from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Send us your comments, questions, or suggestions for the show to crypto@bloomberg.net. The supervising producer of Bloomberg Crypto is Vicky Vergolina. Our senior producer is Janet Babin. Our producers are Mohammed Farouk and Sharon Barrero. Our associate producers are Ty Butler and Moses Undum. Desta Wonderad is our engineer. Original music by Leo Sidran. I'm Stacey Marie Ishmael. We'll be back tomorrow.